Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Samira and today I'm going to tell you about this book I recently read and loved, Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. So this is sort of like an introduction to the book and also a spoiler-free book review. So let's get to it. So Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies came out at the beginning of 2023. It's written by Heather Fawcett and it's not a very long fantasy. It's actually 325 pages. And of course, as the title suggests, it's about fairies. I wanted to read this book from the first moment I saw the cover on Goodreads. It had a pretty cover, a very intriguing title, a good story, a good synopsis. It had romance and it was about fairies, so it was definitely my kind of book. I somehow put off reading this book until almost the end of the year. I read this one in November, and I'm actually glad that happened because now that I finished it, I can't wait for book 2, and now I have less time to wait because book 2 is coming out in January 2024, and I have almost a month to wait, and it's still too much. Now let me tell you what the story is about. The story of Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies begins in the October of 1909 in a Nordic village called Ravensvik. I'm going to tell you right here that most of us are going to be struggling with the pronunciations in this book. The names are hard, but the audiobook helped me a lot. So Emily has traveled to Useland, to this remote, wintry, snowy, rustic village called Ravensvik to conduct field studies. She wants to finish her book, which is going to be the first ever written Encyclopedia of Fairies. She's a scholar and a very young professor of Dryadology at the University of Cambridge. Now, Dryadology is the study of fae folk and, their habitat, their realms, all about that. So it's a thing in this world. And Emily is all about doing business. It's all about the scholarly part of this job. So she's really determined to conduct her research, be very professional, and study the fae, the folk of the area. She's introverted and smart, very driven for her research, and also quite fearless to the point that sometimes her life is in danger, and instead of running away, she wants to stop and collect a sample. Needless to say that she also struggles with social norms and social situations. She's the kind that unintentionally insults people and creates misunderstanding that later on, even though she wants to, she doesn't know how to get out of or how to fix the problem. With all of these said, I love Emily's character. She's very well written and her personality is very consistent throughout the story. We don't have the grumpy academic woman at the beginning and get to something very different at the end. She's still Emily and it's very believable. Her personality, she doesn't flip personalities. And then we have Wendell Bumblebee. He provides such a nice contrast to Emily's character. He's just fun to have around, and these two obviously give off grumpy sunshine vibes a lot in the book, and their back and forth and bantering is just so good. It's so satisfying and delicious considering it's in the setting of 1909. So that kind of bantering. They're colleagues at Cambridge, but Bumblebee calls himself Emily's best friend. Now, Emily doesn't have many friends, and because she's not good with these stuff, she kind of lets him get away with it and do whatever he wants because he's always around for some reason. But at the same time, she has suspicions when it comes to Wendell Bumblebee. Emily has this idea of him that Bumblebee sometimes cheats with his work and he kind of creates research without having done the proper job himself. He charms students and gets them to do things for him. You get the picture. But he's also very well respected in their Dryadology community, and Emily is kind of worried that if they do this research together, as Bumblebee offers to help, to help Emily with the research, if they do the research together, Emily is worried that her name might be overshadowed by his. She's a bit afraid that he would steal her work. And on top of all that, he's hiding something about his identity, and Emily is kind of onto him. So there's this sense of distrustfulness in the grumpy sunshine trope that I really enjoyed. I thought it added to it and it came out really good. This book is presented in the format of Emily's journal entries. She's kind of writing in her journal day by day to have enough source data to gather a conclusion for her books later on. And I thought that really worked well with this story. But also have it in mind that her descriptions could get a bit academic at times, maybe a bit lengthy, and there are also footnotes. I know some people really don't like footnotes, but it didn't bother me in this book because I was listening to it on audio and when you're listening to the audiobook, it doesn't matter that much. Somebody else is kind of reading them to you. I thought it was alright for me, but just in case, have it in mind if you're one of those people that really get irritated by it. Overall, the early parts of the story might seem a bit slower because the language is different and the setting is in 1909. It might be a bit different than your normal fantasy read, but by the time Bumblebee was introduced into the story, I had already gotten used to the writing style, and I was so invested in the story and the characters that it was just fun from then on. Overall, Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies is a classic old-school fairy story. What I mean by that is that you're not gonna encounter your popular high-fae shadow daddy with impressive wingspans in this book. Not that I dislike that, that's good in its own place. But in this book, we have a different type of fae. The classic view of the fae folk. They're tricky, they're playful, and they're quite often very dangerous to deal with. We have brownies and kelpies, and we also have courtly fae, or the tall ones as the Nordic people call them, which are the more humanoid type of fae, and they're much more powerful with their magics and they're much more dangerous. So if you're looking for that kind of old school classic fae, this book has it. This might be for you. Definitely check it out. I have heard people call Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies as a cozy fantasy, but let me tell you, this is not a cozy fantasy because it's very plot driven and the stakes are not low at all in the book. We actually have a very solid plot to stick to, so in my opinion, that's not cozy fantasy. But I think this book should be described as a cozy winter read in the sense that you get to curl up with this book under a blanket and have a coffee or tea by your side and enjoy the read. This is that type of book because the setting is wintry, it's cold. Emily and Wendell are staying at this cottage in the middle of nowhere. There's firewood and, cozy fires going on. This setting kind of matches up perfectly with winter. And I think I should tell you that romance is a subplot in this book. I mean, the whole plot is something else. The bigger picture is something else. There's no smut, but we have a slow burn, very nice romance going on with room to develop and expand in the second book. So with all the things I said, if you think this book is your cup of tea, I strongly recommend you pick it up because I enjoyed the reading so much. It was everything I wanted to read. I had a lot of fun with this book. The characters are lovable, the fantasy aspect is good. We have a very nice view of fae folk. The romance was very enjoyable and cute. I can't wait for more of it. And the book also doesn't end on a cliffhanger, so don't worry about that. We have a conclusion. The story gets wrapped up in book 1, and we're gonna wait for the further development in book 2. So no cliffhangers. And of course, book 2 is coming out very soon in a month in January 2024. So it's a perfect time. If you haven't read this yet, you might want to try it now in time to get to the second book. So that was it for the spoiler-free book review of Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, written by Heather Fawcett. Tell me in the comments, guys, if you have read this book, if you loved it, or if you have other recommendations, books similar to this one. I really appreciate that. I'm always looking for fairy stories in this kind of vibe. So please tell me in the comments if you have any. As always, thank you for watching today's video, guys. I really hope you enjoyed. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!